Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent.
Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa.
We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south.
Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Israeli strikes kill 11, including Gaza's Hamas-run police chief in the besieged territory, as per the authorities. U.S. investigators believe multiple individuals are involved in the New Orleans attack that killed 15 people on New Year's after a truck driver carrying the ISIS flag rammed into a crowd. A gunman who killed at least 12 people at a restaurant in southern Montenegro dies from injuries after shooting himself. And South Korean police raid the offices of Jeju Air and the Muan International Airport's operator as they step up their probe into the fatal crash that killed 179 people. And the DRC sentences 13 soldiers to death on charges including cowardice. Military authorities call it a drive to boost army discipline after territorial losses to rebels due to soldiers fleeing. Hello and welcome. We begin with Mauritius. The African island nation is giving a hard time to its former colonial power, the United Kingdom, and Britain's ally, the United States. Mauritius' new Prime Minister, Navin Ramgoolam, who has resumed talks over the historic Chagos deal with the UK, has now made it clear that its strategic island is not for sale. Under the deal struck between UK Prime Minister Kier Starmer and the former Mauritius Prime Minister Pravind Jugnauth in October, the UK would cede control of the Chagos Islands to the former colony Mauritius. Earlier, it was reported that the new Prime Minister Ramgoolam is renegotiating the deal over financial disagreements. But he has now clarified it is not just about money, but it's also about sovereignty. In a statement referring to the US and the UK, Ramgoolam said that the tenant must not become the owner of Diego Garcia. It's the largest island in the Chagos archipelago that the UK would retain its control over as a part of the deal. Now, Chagos Islands are a group of over 60 smaller islands in the Indian Ocean. After decades, the UK finally agreed to cede its last colony of Africa to Mauritius last year. However, the UK would retain the control of Diego Garcia, which is home to a joint UK-US base. The UK would retain it for a 99-year lease, and this is where the disagreements began. Since taking office, Ramgoolam has sought to reopen negotiations. As per the reports in the British media, Mauritius is asking the UK to pay more for its 99-year lease of Diego Garcia. The Mauritian Deputy Prime Minister was also cited in several reports, saying that the UK is nitpicking about a very small amount. But the latest comments by Prime Minister Ramgoolam now suggest that Mauritius is unhappy over the entire leasing proposal itself. Now, this could be a fresh blow to the Starmer government in the UK, which is very keen on finalising the deal. The UK for years faced huge backlash for its control over the Chagos. Mauritius has argued that it was forced to give away islands after independence in the 1960s. The UK then forcibly removed the Chagos Islanders and set up a military base with the United States. So when the deal was struck in October last year with the previous Mauritius Prime Minister, Starmer government saw it as a win, as it was giving away its final African colony, but managing to retain control of the strategic base. But the deadlock over the deal is creating panic in London and also in Washington. The current Biden administration is also rushing to finalize the deal. The UK and the US officials are frequently engaging in talks with the Mauritian officials over the agreement. The reason for their hurry is the fear of incoming Trump administration. Reports say the US President-elect Donald Trump could completely quash the deal. He is not ready to give away an American crucial base in Diego Garcia, even on a lease. He reportedly fears it will compromise national security and will also allow China to set up a rival base in the region and gain more influence. Now, will the current Mauritian administration hold out the deal till Trump returns to the White House? Meanwhile, suspense also builds on which way would Trump steer the Chagos deal. For more on this, we have with us Confidence Macari, a senior geopolitics analyst at SBM Intelligence, who is joining us live from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me once again. It's good to be back here.
Now, Confidence, what are the implications of Mauritius Prime Minister Pravind Jugnauth's statement that the tenant must not become the owner of Diego Garcia? And how does this challenge the US and the UK's current strategic interests in the region?
All right, so we have to take into account what the Prime Minister's comments mean. Mauritius has always regarded the UK as a tenant, despite the fact that since its modern history, Mauritius, we had sovereignty claims over the island. The island became a UK colony in 1815 when the Consortium of European powers defeated Napoleon. So ever since then, the UK has not really let go of the island, as you've alluded to, because it sits in a very strategic location in close to the Indian Ocean, where setting a base there could help a particular country project power to Middle East, to Africa, and to Asia. So what the Prime Minister... Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, so I was saying that what the Prime Minister's comments takes into account is that the tides have shifted, and I do think that it is in line with what the Mauritians are feeling, that they now have the upper hand in terms of negotiations with the UK, and trying to get a great deal out of it. I think it was as recent as 2 weeks ago that an unnamed UK official was saying that the Mauritians are asking for at least £100 million to be paid annually to them, which of course the UK government is stalling in paying, as you rightly are picking over the details. So I think what those comments mean is that Mauritius will try to apply as much international pressure, publicly and privately, as they can, in order to get a much better deal going into the next few years before the Trump administration finally comes into office.
Right, Confidence. Now, Confidence, how might the resumed negotiations, focusing not only on the financial compensation, but also on the issue of sovereignty and the lease duration, influence the future of the US military base on Diego Garcia, and then further the other geopolitical dynamics of the Indian Ocean?
Now, when we talk about sovereignty, we have to take into account whose sovereignty we are talking about. International law recognizes Mauritian sovereignty over it. By the jaw approach, you should be looking at Mauritian sovereignty over it. But given the fact that Mauritius does not possess the island at the moment, de facto sovereignty rests with the UK,
Right.
which has been the owner of the island since 1814.
Right.
And so
Right.
what this
Confidence, we'll
typically
have to
means
leave it
is
there.
that
Confidence, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights on the latest coming out of that deal. Shifting focus now to Kenya, where the growing public anger is building pressure on President William Ruto, who has now been forced to speak up. Kenyan President William Ruto has for the very first time publicly acknowledged the abuse of power by his security forces. Ruto has admitted that there have been instances of excessive and extrajudicial actions by security personnel, though he did not clarify what these actions are. The public admissal comes amid a wave of controversial kidnappings that have reignited widespread protests. Many Kenyans have hit the streets again to rally against the series of recent unexplained abductions of government critics. As per reports, over 80 people in Kenya have been missing since June, when young Kenyans were on a march against tax hikes proposed by the Ruto administration. Protesters, activists and opposition blame the government for these abductions. Now, in the recent anti-abduction protests, several protesters have been detained, including opposition members.
We need to take action because the government, the people who are abducting or taking people, they are taking them with handcuffs and guns. So it can't be, after the financial protest of June, that is when this started. The crackdown that the government started, when the president went out on national television and said that he's going to go after the people who went to parliament, who invaded parliament. That is when the abductions kicked off. That is when they intensified. We believe it's the directive of the government.
Authorities had earlier denied that government engages in any extrajudicial abductions, but now it has come down to Ruto admitting to security abuses. In fact, he has given more statements lately reflecting on his climb-down approach. Ruto, who earlier called these abductions fake news, over the weekend he promised to put an end to them amid growing calls for government accountability. While President Ruto has finally acknowledged and promised action, the probe is still moving at a snail's pace. Now, that's not all. The Kenyan police have even failed to follow court orders on release of those detained as families grow desperate, demanding the release of their loved ones. Last week, the Nairobi High Court ordered Kenya's Inspector General of Police to personally produce in court by Tuesday 5 individuals who were abducted on Christmas Eve. Now, these are the most recent abductions to have taken place in Kenya. 2 of these abductees were taken shortly after sharing AI-generated images showing Ruto dead. However, the police failed to stand on the court order. Even the police inspector general did not show up and instead sent a representative in his place. So mere talk and promises might not be enough for Kenyans who demand action and accountability from the Ruto government. And moving on to Central Africa, where Cameroon's 91-year-old president, Paul Biya, has hinted at another term as the head of state. During the end-of-year address to the nation, Cameroon's President Paul Biya subtly indicated that he was interested in seeking an 8th term in the presidential elections, which are expected to be held in October of 2025. The nonagenarian leader, who has been in power since 1982, warned that 2025 was full of challenges, which was interpreted by some observers as a suggestion that Biya saw himself as the head of state of the Central African country beyond 2025. In his address, Biya said that he particularly appreciated the unwavering and massive support that he had gotten over the years and assured the public that his resolve to serve the country remained steadfast amid the growing challenges. The nonagenarian president also said that he was paying attention to the cries of members of his party Cameroon's People's Democratic Movement, or the CPDM, who have reportedly embarked on a propaganda drive to market his candidacy. At almost 92 years of age, Biya remains the sole candidate of the ruling CPDM party. Now, Paul Biya has been the president of Cameroon since 1982. In a continent where the young population has been pressurizing leaders to give up power, he is the only leader that most Cameroonians know. The nonagenarian president is the oldest-serving leader in the world and is also the second longest-serving leader in the Africa after Equatorial Guinea's head of state. President Biya has been criticized for taking extended stays abroad, especially in Switzerland, and is accused by human rights groups of intimidating opponents to strengthen his grip on political power. In October last year, concerns began to spark over his health condition when he was not seen in public for at least 6 weeks. His absence from the public eye also led to rumors about his death on social media platforms. However, the government quashed those rumors, saying that they were pure fantasy, and have repeatedly insisted that the nonagenarian president was fit to govern the country. Yet the hint of Biya running again for the president's post comes at a time when aging leaders across the world have taken a call to either step down or drop out of election race owing to their health and age-related concerns. This is especially true in the case of the United States, where 82-year-old President Joe Biden decided to drop out of the election race in 2024 owing to party pressure and concerns over his age and health. But in stark contrast to Biden's voluntary exit, Biya wants to extend his 42 years-long political career, and that is rooted in the political culture he comes from. In Africa, long tenures are not an uncommon phenomenon. The president of Equatorial Guinea, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Massacho, has been serving as the president of the Central African country since 1979. However, Biya's prolonged rule in Cameroon has only exemplified issues in authoritarian regimes where power is often highly personalized and there are no clear mechanisms of leadership transition. So, with Paul Biya refusing to step down, concerns have begun to creep up about the implications of the nonagenarian president's extra term on the political stability and governance in Cameroon. And moving on to our final report, which is from South Africa, scientists and conservationists in the country are raising an alarm over the possible extinction of the native penguins that are found in South Africa and Namibia. In recent years, the African penguin population has dwindled owing to the lack of adequate food, growing predatory activities, and changing climatic conditions. This has pushed the International Union for Conservation of Nature to list these African seabirds as critically endangered. Despite several initiatives from the government, scientists feel that there is more that needs to be done to protect the penguins. Our next report gets you all the details.
These are African penguins, noisy, curious, beautiful, and often mischievous. These seabirds are generally found only in South Africa and Namibia. Legend has it that African penguins were the first penguins that were described by European explorers, especially those who came with the famous Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama. At one point in time, it's believed that there were more than 4 million African penguins in the region. However, over the years, fewer than 10,000 breeding pairs are left globally, mainly in South Africa, with fears emerging that they could become extinct in the wild by 2035.
There's only about 10,000 breeding pairs left in South Africa and Namibia where they occur. It means we've lost 97% of the population, and the species could become extinct within my lifetime. So it's something that really is a critical issue at the moment.
The stark drop in the population of penguins has been primarily due to a combination of factors. These include lack of adequate food, changing climatic conditions, continuous predatory activities, spread of diseases, and frequent oil spills. The dwindling penguin numbers has pushed the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which compiles a red list of the world's threatened species, to list the African penguins as critically endangered in October 2024. Ever since then, several scientists and conservationists, not only from South Africa but across the world, have urged authorities to ensure that these beautiful seabirds are protected.
I think it's certainly a wake-up call when an animal is placed on the endangered species list. It makes us all realise just what a dire state we're in. Our icons of Australia, the koala, were just placed on the endangered species list. Of course, when you come to Cape Town, one of the first animals you think of is the penguin. You think of the beautiful African penguins, and the fact that they're not only endangered but critically endangered, it's a sobering thought.
Many organizations like the Southern African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds that run rehab centers for African penguins in Cape Town have also gained prominence. Clean-up drives have also taken place around places such as the Robben Island coastline in South Africa, which is home to the penguins. The government has also set up no fishing zones and has proposed the setting up of artificial nests to improve breeding. Still, South African scientists are worried that the efforts being put in to stop the decline are not sufficient, and that more has to be done to conserve these endangered species. They feel it's necessary to manage the growing predators of these seabirds as well as secure their food.
We really need to do everything we can, and securing their food source is one of the biggest things that we can do to try and stop that decline. And it is possible to recover the penguin. That's the thing. We can't lose hope.
These demands, however, have brought them into conflict with the growing tourism industry in South Africa, which brings thousands of dollars of profit to the southern African country. This has put the future of the critically endangered African penguins into limbo, who want nothing more than peace from disturbances and adequate food for survival.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.